welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about.
Hello. I am your phone. Please pick me up.
Hello? Dude, I'm actually kind of busy. What project? Test? They gave us Diwali homework? Yeah, no, I haven't done that either. I'll actually call you back. Yeah. Let's talk about education. Let's start with some quick history. Over the last 60 years, 6 educational reforms have been suggested, all with one goal in mind: quality. I think we can all agree that we've succeeded in achieving that one goal. That's a show. Thanks for watching. Are you serious? Please tell me you didn't buy that. Please. Our education system continues to demand the most of us when it fails to deliver the bare minimum. And now I know a lot of you think that the National Education Policy of 2020 is going to revolutionize schooling, but based solely on the trajectory and the track record of our past educational systems, I think I'm going to reserve my judgment on that one. At the heart of the matter, there are 3 fundamental issues with our education system. First, access to education. Second, students' well-being. And third, being funding. So let's get into those. Access. In India, there are 2 methods by which the government ensures that education is provided to those who would maybe not get access to it. The first one being the Right to Education Act. The Right to Education Act, or the RTE Act, describes that education must be free and compulsory for all those falling in the age group of 6 to 14 years in India. Now, as perfect as that sounds on paper, they fail to deliver most of their promises. The inherent loopholes and flaws in the Act itself have stopped it from achieving some of its most basic goals. Personally, having been in a school that included students brought in by the RTE Act, I know for a fact that they didn't receive the help that they required to integrate into a system that very often doesn't want to support them. And the second method is reservations. Now, I know this is a controversial topic, and I know that we're going to get a lot of hate for this. But hey, we've got to talk about it. There are a couple of misconceptions when it comes to reservations. Namely, that A, it provides a cakewalk into prestigious universities for undeserving students. B, it should be based on financial status. And C, that it upholds social divides. To answer those, no they don't, no it shouldn't, and no it doesn't. For example, in DU, the cutoff for reserved seats is also above 95%, which is comfortably high enough. Moreover, there does exist a reservation on the basis of financial status. It's called the economically backward quota. And about class divides and social divides, the one key point to remember about reservations is that it enables the representation of lower caste communities in fields that they have historically been barred from entering, and not for economic upliftment. So pretending like class divides don't exist doesn't make them go away. Now let's talk about the second issue: students' well-being. The state of sex education and mental health education in our schools is laughable. In 2006, the CBSE tried to introduce a sex education plan that was heavily criticized and opposed all over the country, even in Maharashtra. In 2007, the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, seen here enjoying his trip to the water park, removed sex education from the curriculum on the advice of an RSS member, possibly because the RSS member found no evidence or proof of a thing named sex to have existed. Oh, and that's not it. Teachers and parents thought that sex education was a secret marketing ploy by condom companies. Because that's definitely the demographic they're aiming for, right? Minors with absolutely no money. Oh, and just in case you think that all of these sex education plans were adequate, yeah, no, you're wrong. Because none of these plans mentioned anything about gender, sexuality, masturbation, nocturnal emissions, reproductive health, and most importantly, consent. In India, a rape is reported every 16 minutes. we've also had the third largest HIV/AIDS epidemic. And so I don't need to emphasize why exactly our students need to be taught sex education. See, sex education is a lot like a driving test. For giving the test, you need to be able to drive so that you know what to do when you get into a car. And like, moreover, if someone was caught fucking a car every 16 minutes, we would immediately question what exactly was being taught in driving schools in the first place. Speaking of fucking cars, let's talk about mental health issues. 15 million people in India have some kind of mental health issue, and 10% of India's children are on that list. And yet, the mental health education in our schools is close to non existent. In 2008, the CBSE recommended that every senior secondary and secondary school employ a counselor and also ensure that its students engage in activities that help them create their own self image. But because both of these recommendations were extremely vague and broad, most schools brush this under the rug. And so this leaves the students at the mercy of their clueless friends and the internet, which are, and this is a proven fact, the ingredients to a disaster. According to several reports, every day 28 students in India commit suicide. 4 out of 10 students admittedly face anxiety, depression, or both. Denying our students sex education and mental health education has led to the creation of generations after generations of people who are incapable of handling the changes their own minds and bodies present to them, not to even mention those that are inflicted upon them by others. To be honest, I don't even know why I need to explain this. Kids, above all, deserve all of the love and care that the world can offer. It's really just kids, animals, and of course, Canada. That brings us to our final problem: funding. India spends 46% of its GDP on education. Wait, what? Oh, never mind, it's 4.6%. No, 3.5%. No, 3.3% of its total government spending on education. Yeah, that's not a lot. See, to be fair, there are some schemes like the midday meal and the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan that have made a difference. But a lot of the schemes are, how do I put this delicately? Shitty allocations. For example, just consider how insanely overworked and severely underpaid our teaching staff is. Moreover, we don't have ample teachers either. In India, the ratio of students to teachers is 24:1. Compare that to Sweden's 12:1. And even better, 10:1 in, take a guess, 10:1 in Canada. In Canada. Yeah. Okay, so not investing in the syllabus, not investing in our teachers either. So the government's probably investing in our infrastructure, right? Wrong. Here, we're going to be talking about the IIT-IIM issue. To give you context, IIT-IIM institutes are allotted a significant chunk of all of the funds given to higher education, when only 3% of all of the Indian students attend these universities, completely leaving the 97% of us who attend the other 865 educational institutes, out of which half of them are aided by the government. I mean, that really makes you feel like the government prefers some students over the other, right? Because like, if you didn't catch that, let me repeat myself, half of these other government aided colleges are given less than half of all of the funds allocated to higher education. And it's not just that. The FM announced that the government will also be creating urban local bodies to give internships to fresh engineers right out of college that last up to 1 year. Seriously? So what, do artists not matter? Do commerce students not matter? Is that what it is? You tell me, what is the world without art? What are you going to do if there are no artists? What are you going to do? What are you going to do if there's no one to count your money or whatever it is that commerce students do? What are you going to do? Half? 97% of us? Half? Bullshit. So how do we fix this? Let's start by talking about the one plan that was supposed to change all of this. The National Education Policy of 2020. One of the first and foremost changes suggested by the NEP, and also one of the most controversial ones, is shifting away from English as the medium of instruction to regional languages, at least until 8th grade. This is one of those ideas that sounds great until you think about it for a couple of seconds, like drunk texting, the sequel of Jurassic World, and, of course, responding to hate comments on a certain episode of this show. See, English is a symbol of privilege and honor in India. And so taking it away from students until 8th grade is only going to further the social divide, because for a lot of underprivileged students, the only place where they could access and learn English was their school. Another critique made on the language front was the imposition of Sanskrit. The compulsory inclusion of Sanskrit has been heavily criticized by the southern states because they claim that this is an attempt to erase their culture, and they're right about it. India is a very, very diverse nation, and we have so much more to offer than just one North India centric version of our country. See, the NEP does have some really good points, but they all come with their own flaws. Like the removal of the board exams to reduce stress. But it's been replaced by a universalized entrance exam for all college applicants. Changing something's name doesn't change what it is. Like, off the top of my head, completely normal example, not like I was thinking about it or anything, but calling yourself a mechanophile doesn't change the fact that you fuck cars, my dude. I think that was too loud. Another change that looks great on paper but is flawed in structure is the inclusion of arts and commerce students in the IIT institutes. Although it's great that now every single student, both arts and commerce sections, can now compete to get into these prestigious universities and use Excel or whatever it is that commerce students do, you need to keep in mind that only 0.01% of all IIT applicants actually get into these universities. So the solution to, hey, maybe engineering students are dying of depression because of how much of a race it is, isn't great. Let's make everyone a part of this race. Also, finally, there's no mention of the scheduled caste, sex education, and mental health education. So the question has to be asked, how progressive really is the National Education Policy of 2020? Look, the problem is that the system simply doesn't care about marginalized students, because them and their communities have been robbed of the very voice that education promises to provide them with. I know it's cliche to say this, but education really is the only true equalizer, and if you don't agree with me on this, it just goes to show the quality of your education. In India, a country full of divides based on religion, caste, gender, sexuality, and so many more, the only thing that can bring us all at the same level is a good education. So how do we do that? Well, our first step should be to strengthen our public schooling. Because the hard truth of today is that parents prefer to put their students in private schools over public schools. Because public schools simply lack the infrastructure to provide quality education. And so before the pandemic even hit us and forced everything, including education, online, public schools were already suffering. And so we desperately need, a good education plan, and we need it soon. Of course, that being said, if all else fails, we can always run off to Canada. That's our show. Thanks for watching.